And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 26th. Tropical Storm Boris becomes the 31st storm of the year 2020, day 178, it's June 26th. A few other areas of interest brewing, but nothing really going on in the tropics today. Looking at the Atlantic, we've now marked a 10% chance in the eastern Atlantic Ocean in the main development region, a small chance for a small system to develop in that area in the next few days. We'll continue to monitor it. Day 43 in the eastern Pacific, and chances continue to tumble for those other areas of interest. There's still 4 on the radar, but only one of them now has a moderate chance by our numbers. 40% is the highest, along with Boris, of course. No systems active in the western Pacific still, a bit of a cyclone drought going on there at the moment, and no signs of life anytime soon either, and chances are starting to fade away for those 2 areas of interest in the southern hemisphere. Unusual for the time of year, but doesn't look like they're going to form. It looks like they're past their peak. Tropical Storm Boris is not too far from the dividing line between the eastern and the central Pacific. 11.2 north, 137.2 west, puts it 1,305 miles east-southeast of the big island of Hawaii. The storm is expected to weaken to a depression very soon, maybe sooner than we think actually. Looking at the latest satellite imagery, it doesn't look very good. Then to a depression, and then to a remnant low by the time we get to day 4, and honestly that could be much sooner as well. Looking at satellite imagery, this is the Atlantic right now. That 10% area we've marked is for a system that hasn't yet emerged off the African coast. We're really talking day 3 to 5 at least on that. So behind that massive pall of dry air coming off the coast of Africa will be potentially our next tropical cyclone. And if not, then long-range models are suggesting more tropical activity on the cards, either off the coast of the US East Coast or in the main development region behind this area. Eastern Pacific, broad areas of interest, and you can see them, some of them there. That 10% chance to the left-hand side near Boris, that's not going to do much now, it would seem. And there's a lot of broad systems that are just really struggling to get themselves together. We thought they'd managed to do it quite a lot better than what's actually been the case, and that could continue, and it could be the case now that none of those other systems actually develop. A bit of a backtrack from what we were saying a few days ago. The Western Pacific is even worse shape. You can see a lot of thunderstorms developing around the area, but it's so disorganized, there's nothing coming out of that at all. But generally, quite a lot of thunderstorms over the Philippines today, and in the Philippine Sea. The South Pacific is looking very quiet actually in comparison to recent days. Even just the small thunderstorms are quite hard to come by, mainly over the Solomon Islands and not far from Samoa. The Indian Ocean, you can see those 2 areas of interest, 1 or 2 raised eyebrows over that South Indian disturbance to the west there. Some speculation that it could have been a tropical depression in the last 24 hours. Sea surface temperatures then looking rather good in the eastern Pacific. Certainly not a lack of sea surface temperatures, although there is that La Nina way down in the equatorial region, which could be putting a spanner in the works. The Atlantic is warming up off the coast of Cuba, 30-degree plus waters there, really warming up now. The Indian Ocean, a few more 30-degree waters popping up in the Bay of Bengal. And in the South China Sea, getting very warm off the western coast of the Philippines, 30 to 32 degrees Celsius, and around the same as it was yesterday in the Philippine Sea out towards the Northern Mariana Islands and beyond. More than enough to sustain significant typhoon activity whenever any system decides it wants to form. Looking at the anomaly there, Eastern Pacific around average overall. The Atlantic still has a little cool spot in the subtropics. So this is a look at Boris. You can see there a lot of convection, but it also is associated with another little low pressure system that's developing to the southwest of Boris, and they're getting a little bit interlocked by the looks of things, and I do wonder whether Boris is on borrowed time, as it were, and maybe it could just degenerate back into the intertropical convergence zone, as a lot of early season cyclones do in the eastern Pacific, but whether that might be coming up sooner rather than later. It will happen in the end, but whether it might happen in the next 12 to 24 hours, we'll see. But on satellite imagery, leaves quite a bit to be desired, and 40 miles per hour is about right. A recent ASCAP pass did find one barb of 40 mile an hour winds, but it really is only hanging by a thread with its current status. Looking at the models though, it projects that Boris will have near tropical storm force winds for the next 2 or 3 days, then it will really die off by the 28th. Wind shear will start to rise a little bit later today. You can see it there, all the models are agreeing that it will rise from 5 to 15 knots roughly. Sea surface temperatures will take us a little bit of a hit, and relative humidity the same, so generally if it's struggling in the conditions it's had in the last 24 hours, it will struggle even more in the next 24 hours. On this day, June 26, 1966, Typhoon Kit, pictured here 2 days before its massive peak. This is a remarkable storm, was moving north at this point in the western part of the Pacific, northeast of the Philippine Islands, had a pressure estimate of 889 millibars by Force 13's estimate, even lower by Japan and the JWC's estimate at 880 millibars. This storm peaked with an estimated wind speed of 195 miles per hour on this day in 1966. So we've finally got Boris. I've been speaking about that for quite a while on this slide. The next name in the Eastern Pacific is Christina, followed by Douglas. In the Atlantic, Edward is next, followed by Faye. And in the Central Pacific, the next name on list 1 is Hone, which doesn't look like it's going to happen out of this abundance of activity. The Western Pacific's next name will be Sinlaku, and in the North Indian Ocean, Gati is next up on the brand new list 1. In the Southern Hemisphere, the Australian region sees Imogen as its next name on the list, followed by Joshua, and in the Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Kundai. In the South Pacific, that is Yolanda in the Fiji region, the next name on the list. That's all for now. We'll have another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow. Check out our new look cyclone tracker on the Force 13 website for the latest up-to-date information. You can also find us, of course, on our YouTube channel, search Force 13, and also on Facebook and Twitter, Force 13 at Force 13 on Twitter for the latest updates. You can also help the project become even better by becoming an Ultimate Fan on YouTube. To see the full list of Ultimate Fan benefits and to join, visit youtube.com/Force13/join. With a special thanks to our top supporters this month. You can also check out our growing merch store so you can show Force 13's colours wherever you go. You can also find a link to our Discord server underneath this video in the description.